What?
Then you'd be like, okay, it's already changed because they're not even sure what they're supposed to be saying. And then they'd pass it on. And a lot of history is like that. There are a lot of stories like that. The older you get, the more you rehear stories from different outlets and different avenues and different places. And you'll hear a story and you're like, man, that sounds familiar. And then you like piece it together and you're like, that's the same exact story, except some things have been changed. It's this scenario was just a simple little story, and then you get to hear and somebody exaggerated it, and then you get down the road a ways and somebody removes some parts, and it's important to keep, I don't even like to use this phrase anymore, to keep an open mind, because as you hear all those stories, you'll start to realize that it's all the same, just people using different portions of it, and it could be different perspectives. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, good examples. They're not identical. They have a lot of the same stories, but I don't believe that God stole their perspective away from them when he called them to write each gospel. And so this is kind of one of those stories. Like there's so much happening, and it's like who's who and who was doing what and who was doing nothing and who was asking, what are you doing? And so I might just read through the entire text and then we'll just piece through some things. But we started into chapter 18, and we kind of realized that there's some relationships you'll have in life that will reveal things. You'll see things about it. You'll be like, this is probably not the best individual for me to be hanging around with. Sometimes another friend will actually say, hey, you might want to be careful hanging around those individuals. It's funny, being a pastor for 18 years, I've had pastors warn me about missionaries, it's crazy. You're like, wait, a missionary? And I'm thinking back, one of the pastors that warned me about a missionary, later I found out somebody should warn me about him. And I'm like, now, I can tell you honestly, he was not dead wrong about the missionary he warned me about. He was on spot. But a few years down the road, I was like, well, nobody warned me about him. And what I should have done is gone and talked to the missionary. He probably could have told me about the pastor. But you just kind of let the Lord lead through those things, direct through those things, and don't throw people out just because somebody warns you about them, but start to look and see, okay, is this somebody I should hang around with or not? We're going to pick up in verse 7 of chapter 18. Then the 5 men departed and came to Laish and saw the people that were therein, how they dwelt careless after the manner of the Zidonians, quiet and secure. There was no magistrate in the land that might put them to shame in anything, and they were far from the Zidonians and had no business with any man. And they came unto their brethren, to Zorah and Eshtaol, and their brethren said unto them, what say ye? We're going to look at some questions that are asked through this passage, but it's a question that is asked, and I think we need to be on both sides of it. You need to be willing to ask, hey, what say you? But you also need to be ready with an answer when somebody, today it would be, well, I'm probably dating myself with this, but somebody would walk up to a crowd of people and say, what's the word? Big Bird. Sometime it was mum, other things. But just the idea of what's the 411? What's going on? What do you say? What's your perspective? And that's kind of what's going on here. And we need to be prepared to answer that question, but we also need to be willing to ask that question. And so we find them here saying, what say ye? And they said, arise, that we may go up against them, for they have seen the land, we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good, and are ye still? Be not slothful to go, and to enter to possess the land. I think what they're saying here is we can go possess the land. There's no border, nobody cares. Just want to point that out. Verse 10, when ye go, ye shall come unto the people secure into a large land, for God hath given into your hands a place where there is no want of anything that is in the earth. And there went from thence of the family of the Danites out of Zorah and out of Eshtaol 600 men appointed with weapons of war. Now I want you to just notice really quick, we have the 5 men that were sent as spies. They went and saw the land. They saw the people that dwelt after the manner of the Zidonians. And we see the description of that. They're careless. They're secure. They really don't have any dealings with anybody. There's nobody that they're close with. I would say this, they have no allies. Nobody to back them up if they get in trouble. And so they've been spied out by these 5 individuals. Now they go back and tell the story. They're like, listen, we need to go and possess the land. There's nobody to help them. Let's just go take it. And they send 600 men appointed with weapons of war. Verse 12, and when they went up and pitched at Kirjath-jearim in Judah, wherefore they called that place Mahanadan unto this day. Behold, it is behind Kirjath-jearim. And they passed thence unto Mount Ephraim, and came unto the house of Micah. We've talked about Micah. Micah is the man that these 5 men went to stay with for a period of time, and they came across a Levite that they knew, who was the priest to Micah and his family. Verse 14, then answered the 5 men that went to spy out the country of Laish, and said unto their brethren, do ye know that there is in this house an ephod and a teraphim, and a graven image and a molten image? Now therefore consider what ye have to do. They ask the question, what say you? These 5 men give them the response, and then they say to them, listen, in this house is this ephod and this teraphim and this graven image and this molten image. And then to make the statement, now therefore consider what ye have to do. They're saying there's no options here. There's just one thing. You have to go ahead and do it. Verse 15, and they turned thitherward. How many have ever turned thitherward? Anybody? Yeah, I'm not sure what direction they were going. I really don't know where they're going now. But they turned thitherward and came to the house. I know y'all are going to use that when you leave tonight. We're going thitherward. We'll be back Wednesday. But that's fine. Be thitherward then. I just like saying the word thitherward. Sounds like you have a speech impediment. Yeah, I'm tired. And came to the house of the young man, the Levite, even unto the house of Micah, and saluted him. And the 600 men appointed with their weapons of war, which were of the children of Dan, stood by the entering in of the gate, or the entering of the gate. And the 5 men that went to spy out the land went up and came in thither, and took the graven image, and the ephod, and the teraphim, and the molten image. And the priest stood in the entering of the gate with the 600 men that were appointed with weapons of war. So just to get the picture, the priest who was Micah's priest, he was a Levite, he was now standing with the 600 men of war in the gate of the city. So he's there with them. The 5 men go into Micah's house. They take the ephod, the teraphim, the molten image, and the graven image, and they remove it. And so as they come out to meet the men, we find them, where is it, verse 18. And these went into Micah's house and fetched the carved image and the ephod and the teraphim and the molten image. Then said the priest unto them, what do ye? He's like, wait, hold on. What are you doing? Just simple questions that are asked. What say ye? What do ye? I think these are simple questions that we need to have ready an answer for. We shouldn't just be doing things haphazard, doing things with no purpose. But in this scenario, the priest is asking, what do ye? Verse 19, they said unto him, hold thy peace. Lay thine hand upon thy mouth and go with us and be to us a father and a priest. Is it better for thee to be a priest unto the house of one man, or that thou be a priest unto a tribe and a family in Israel? And the priest's heart was glad. And he took the ephod and the teraphim and the golden or the graven image and went into the midst of the people. So this Levite, let's just understand where he's at. Micah came across him and said, hey, why don't you come live with me, and you can be my priest, you can be my father, And he says, I'll give you, all of your victuals, anything you want to eat, and I will go ahead and I'll give you apparel a year. And then there was some money there too. And he said, you just come be the priest of my family. The Danites come along, and obviously a little bit more potent. They have 5 spies and 600 men with weapons. And they say to him, listen, is it better for you to be the priest of one family or a whole tribe? And you can be not only of a tribe, but we're of a family of Israel. And so we're going to restore you to serving amongst your own people, among your family. And so this priest, notice what it says in verse 20. The priest's heart was glad. He's excited. And what's he do? He takes the very things that he used in being a priest for Micah and now carries them away, steals them to go be a priest for his own people. Don't think that, I hate to use this phrase, don't think that men of the cloth can't be persuaded to do criminal acts. I saw a shirt yesterday. It was on a motorcycle rider. And it's funny. It was funny because he was in the right lane. His shirt said the left lane is for crime. And I thought, my wife needs that shirt. Because how many of you know that left lane, there is no speed limit? There's not. Do you know why? Well, you read the speed limit from the right side, and there's none along that dotted line. They're all over on the right-hand side for the slow people. So there's no speed limit there. I'm not sure if that'd hold up in court, but I'd argue it. But the reality is, this guy knew, hey, the left lane is for crime. And he looked like the kind of guy that has probably done some time, so I wasn't going to question it. But don't think that a man of God or somebody who claims to be a man of God can't be persuaded to be pushed aside and to be moved and kind of molded into another position. He was glad. And then literally, he took the very things that were from Micah's house and stole them to go ahead and be a priest. I can tell you this, if anything ever happens to me and you have to vote in another pastor, try and look for a guy who is not stolen from his previous church. Just that should probably be number one on the pulpit committee. We do not want a pastor who has stolen from his previous church. It's a simple request. And I'll be honest with you, it'll probably rule out several men. But the reality is, men of God can be persuaded. I'm not planning anything. I don't want you to think, oh, Pastor Bell, he's going to go pastor a multi-billion-dollar church. No, listen, Pastor Bell is content at Cornerstone Baptist Church. If I never have to go to another place, I'm fine with that. I don't want you to think, oh, what do you think Pastor meant by that? Pastor's just seeing what he sees in the Bible and just preaching it. And so I know the rumors are going to start, I heard that Joel Osteen called Pastor Bell and he wanted him to take over. Joel just doesn't want somebody with better hair in there. That's what it is. But you have to be careful because anybody can be persuaded to do pretty much anything. The priest's heart was glad, and then he went ahead and stole from his previous parishioner. That's a scary thought to me. Verse 21, and they turned and departed and put the little ones and the cattle and the carriage before them. So they put all the little ones, the cattle up front. So that as they're traveling, anybody that would come from behind and attack, which is what was about to happen, they put the little ones up front so they were protected. Verse 22, and when they were a good way from the house of Micah, the men that were in the houses near to Micah's house were gathered together and overtook the children of Dan. And they cried unto the children of Dan and turned their faces and said unto Micah, what aileth thee that thou comest with such a company? So, just the picture. The Danites are traveling. They've got 600 men. They've got all their children and their cattle and their wives up front. These 600 men are kind of covering the back just to make sure. They've just stolen from Micah. They've stolen all of his vessels for worship. They stole his priest. And now they have the audacity to ask, What aileth thee? There are some questions that do not demand an answer because they already have the answer. They already know. That thou comest with such a company. And he said, ye have taken away my gods which I made. That in itself right there. My gods which I have made. Do you understand how backwards that is? Yet, today, people still make their gods. I used to say it a lot. I don't point it out too much anymore. But if we're on the way to church and we see a bunch of guys, could be on, lately it's been a bunch of guys on motorcycles, because it's been good weather, and they're all cruising around, and I'm like, oh man, look at that. Those guys are out riding their gods. Now, I don't know if they worship their motorcycles or not, but I know that if they're out on a Sunday morning riding a motorcycle around, they're obviously not worshiping God. And so the reality is you see them and but for us to point and say, oh, they've made their own gods, well, be careful. Don't be making your own God. I'm thankful that our God made us. We don't have to make him. I'm not spiritual enough nor religious enough to take the time to make a God. Really. If I didn't know the true God, I would just be an agnostic. Now, some people think, well, isn't that the same as an atheist? No. An agnostic, it depends on which ones you talk to. There's positive agnostics and negative agnostics. And this is my own research. This is not something they handed me from their church. But I've talked to agnostics, and one side, they say, well, I really don't believe that there is a God. But they don't say there definitely isn't a God. They're just like, I just don't believe there is a God. The other side is, well, I would like to believe there's a God. So that's why I say there's positive and negative agnostics. You can be on either side of that and claim to be agnostic. Clear that up by pointing out what an atheist is. An atheist means that they believe there is no God. Now, the Bible tells us, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. So, I would rather talk to an agnostic because there's a possibility. A true atheist, they're just like, nope, he doesn't exist, we're done. And they have a lot to answer for when it comes to it. I mean, because the first thing you do when deciding whether there is a God or there isn't a God, you take the evidence presented. One of the things is, what does he claim? Well, he claims that he created all things. All right? What did he create? Well, he created humankind. Do we have humankind? Yeah, that kind of means there's a God. Did he create the birds of the air? Yeah, more evidence. Did he create trees and grass? Oh, yeah, Man, there's a lot of evidence about what this God claims. And not only that, but he claims he did it in 7 days. No, 6 days. And then he rested on the seventh day. And he claims that in those 6 days he created something called the sun. We still have one of those around. He claims he created the moon. Oh no. I was delivering a shed the other day, and the mother and the two little kids came out on the porch. And the little boy, he was probably about 2. He looks up at the sky and he goes, moon! And he looks at me, moon! And I'm like, yeah, moon! His mom's looking at me like, what's your problem? I'm like, hello. The kid said moon. I agree with him. It's a moon. But all this evidence of what God claims, it's real, and they deny it all. And that's scary. That's a scary place to be. But we need to be clear that whether agnostic or atheist, I'm thankful that I know the God that created me. I didn't create no God. I'm not crafty enough to create a God. If I created a God, it would be the most pathetic looking God ever. I've seen people, you can carve things and they make them look like, wow. In fact, one of the pastors that I traveled to the Congo with, he carves little figurines. And I thought he just did it, in his spare time, which he does in his spare time. But I'm like, he probably just has these little knickknacks around the house. well, he said, oh, here's some of them I've done. And he starts showing me, and I'm like, why are you even a pastor? Why don't you just do this and sell them and make more money? You know, he said, oh, no, I do that on the side. I'm like, oh, okay. But all these cool little things that he designs, and I'm going, this guy could create his own God, and it would look like something. If I created my own God, somebody would be like, what happened there? And so I'm thankful we don't have to create a God. Micah is upset because they've stolen his gods. Now, he says there in verse 24, and the priest said, ye are gone away, and what have I more? And what is this that thou say unto me? What aileth thee? So here's the question being asked to the people that asked the question. He's like, this is what you did to me, and now you're asking me what ails me? So there's a little bit of contention here. I can understand that. Verse 25, and the children of Dan said unto him, let not thy voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows run upon thee, and that thou lose thy life with the lives of thine household. And the children of Dan went their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back unto his house. And they took the things which Micah had made, and the priests which he had, and came unto Laish, unto a people that were at a quiet and secure. And they smote them with the edge of the sword, and burnt the city with fire. And there was no deliverer, because it was far from Zidon, and they had no business with any man. And it was in the valley that lieth between Beth-rehob, lieth by Beth-rehob. And they built a city and dwelt therein. And they called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan their father, who was born unto Israel. Howbeit the name of the city was Laish at the first. And the children of Dan set up the graven image, and Jonathan the son of Gershom, and the son of Manasseh, he and his sons were priests to the tribes of Dan until the day of the captivity of the land. And they sent them up Micah's graven image, which he made all the time that was the house of God, that the house of God was in Shiloh. Let's bow for the prayer. Father, we do thank you for the opportunity for us to be in your house tonight. And Lord, I pray that you'd help us as we look into this passage. Lord, there's a lot going on here, but God, I pray that you would just help us to pull out some principles, Lord, that would help us to govern our life. Lord, that we would not be superstitious. Lord, that we'd not fall to the place where we would desire or even sometimes create the idea of making our own gods. And Lord, I just pray that you would be with each one of us. Lord, I know that many different levels in here. Lord, some younger ones that are still trying to figure out what they believe. Some older ones that are pretty stout in what they believe. And Lord, I just pray that you'd help us each to make sure that what we believe and the practices that we have are honoring to you. And Lord, just pray that you be with me, that you'd fill me with your Spirit. And we ask this all in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. There's quite a lot packed into this passage, and honestly, part of it I'm a little upset at because for my namesake. I'm embarrassed of the Danites and the things that they would do. But the reality is we know that they were still trying to find an inheritance for themselves. We looked last week, I believe it was, early on in the book of Judges, where they still were dwelling in ships. And so then we find that they're still trying to find an inheritance. They've not been granted their inheritance yet, and so they're still looking for a place. We're in Judges 18, and they're still looking for a place. And so they search out this area, Laish, and they find this group of people who are kind of isolated. They're still, they're quiet, and they're just, they put it this way, if I can find it really quick, they live carelessly. And so the reality of them wanting a place and not been given a place, they've now decided we're going to find a place and we're going to go ahead and pursue and possess that place. Which, if you understand what's going on in the reclaiming or the claiming, if you will, of the promised land, it was not all just handed over. The original plan was, as they came in to possess the land the first time, They were supposed to come in, and the Lord was going to send hornets to chase the people out. That's a pretty good military strategy. I would prefer to possess the land that way. These hornets were going to come in, and they were just going to chase the people far enough that the Israelites would come in and possess that city. And then as they began to prosper and grow, the Lord was going to then chase out the next town and give them a little more land. What a plan. What a way to have things happen. Yet we know that they decided, you know what, the men are too big, the battle's going to be too strong. The real reason that the Israelites did not go into the promised land the first time, does anybody know what it is? Lack of faith, but there was a reason that they gave. No. The children. They didn't want their children to be in a place where they could be hurt. Do you understand what they did? They said, oh, we don't want the children to be injured. We don't want the children to be damaged. We don't want the children to be. And so they said, we're not going to the promised land. Do you understand what they did? They passed the battles that they should have fought to the children. Which means, I don't want my children to be in harm's way now. I'll put them in harm's way later, when I'm out of the way. The reality is, a lot of families still fight for their children that way. Rather than saying, you know what, this is the road we're going to take, and this is how it's going to go, and we're going to claim what is ours, they kind of push it off. Well, I don't want my children to be damaged. I don't want my children to become a problem. I'm past that, by the way. My children are old enough, they can handle themselves. And so we just kind of move ahead. But the reality of those Israelites then passing on to the next generation all the battles that they should have fought. I don't want to pass on to my kids and my grandkids battles that I should be fighting. If I take down giants now, they won't be there for my kids to fight. But if I let those giants exist, then I'm just passing on to the next generation. Here, you go ahead and fight those giants. You go ahead and fight those giants. David's children never had to fight Goliath because he killed him. Man, take him out. Say, well, you know, I don't have a Goliath in my life. Oh, I'll bet you do. If you trace it really clear, he might not be 9.5 feet tall, but he's put a hurting on you and your people. And somebody needs to just stand up and say, no, we're done. Goliath this is the last day he gets to cry against the children of Israel and go out and just knock him in the head. I know it sounds vicious, but it worked for David. Let's carry on the tradition. The Danites, they send these 5 men in. They go through the way of Micah's house because they met the Levite. They knew him, so they stayed with Micah there. And when they went out and spied Laish and realized the people they're not that many, they're not attached, and they're definitely not of the mindset that they're going to stand and protect their land. Which, by the way, reminds me a lot of a country I know a little bit about. Oh yeah, America. There's a lot of people, they're not for standing for what America is. They just, we've lived in the land of blessing because of some godly men before us, and we've forgotten that there's still battles that need to be fought. There's still things that need to be stood up for. There's still things that need to be, take a stand. My goodness. I like the comfortable life, I do. But if I live the comfortable life, I'm passing nothing on to my children. I'm passing nothing on to my grandchildren. And so I don't know what exactly the battle is ahead, but let's stand and let's fight it. The reality of these 5 spies looking at Laish and finding out, you know what, they dwell carelessly, just like the Zidonians. They're quiet and secure. The last part of verse 7, and there was no magistrate in the land, notice the next statement, that might put them to shame in anything. Do you understand? That's what the government was ordained by God to do. we have in the Bible a description of what the government was supposed to do. There's two things the government is ordained to do: punish evildoers and reward those that do good. That's the two things they're supposed to do. I don't know when we left that, but it was a long time ago. We're at the place now where we reward those that do evil and punish those that do good. And so, the government, and people will say, oh, you need to follow the government, you need to obey the government. Well, if the government would abide by what God ordained them to do, I'd have no problem abiding by it. Like, yeah, you're going to punish the evildoers? Hallelujah. You're going to reward those that do good? Amen. Let's go. I can support a government like that. By the way, every person that's put into government, I don't care what level, they have a responsibility to be the good. Even in the Board of Ed, like I dread, do you understand? I know there were people that voted me in, 2,750 of them. And I'm responsible for those people. They voted me in. Above all of that, there's a God that put me in there. I will answer. If I only serve a 3-year term, I will answer for those 3 specific years and what I did to get truth and light into the educational system. It's not about anything else. It's about, hey, God put me here for such a time as this. Let's do it. I'm thankful. I've got multitudes of prayer people. A lot of them here. And then there are other people around that just, what can I do for you? Pray for me. I'll get texts, hey, praying for you as you navigate all this. I said, thank you. I need prayer. But the bottom line is, it comes down to, I've been put into a position that God is going to have me answer for. There's going to be some things He's going to say, hey, why did you do this? Why didn't you do that? I'm not afraid to answer to people, by the way. When I make a decision, I had to make a decision just recently. It wasn't popular. It wasn't even popular with me. I think I explained that. I don't even like the decision I made. But the only thing I did was got on my knees and said, Lord, what am I supposed to do? He confirmed what I was supposed to do. I said, I don't even like that. He said, I didn't ask. I said, okay. So we went ahead and did it. By the way, that decision has already put things in motion that I didn't even know were coming. How would anybody have known that? Oh, yeah, that's right. God runs the whole show. But we're going to answer for that. I'm scared for me. I'm deathly scared for those other ones on the board. I'm like, I don't think they have a clue that they have to answer for this. They will soon, though. Yeah, because I have to answer for some things, so I'm just going to tell them. Here's why I do what I do. If I deny Him before men, He's going to deny me before the Father. Now, I don't think that I even need to be scared that He's going to cut me out of heaven. But do you understand that He is my interceder? I need Jesus to go to the throne of grace for me. If I deny Him before men, do you know what He's not going to do? He's not obligated to intercede for me. I don't want to live a life like that. And so I'm not going to deny Him before men, which may put me in a precarious spot. But I'll tell you this. If it puts me in a precarious spot, I'll be mentioned to the Father, which really gets me out of a precarious spot. It worked for Daniel. It worked for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It worked for Noah. I mean, Noah had to work a little harder, but that's all right. He probably just made his boys do it. He had 3 of them. He probably just, oh, he had daughter-in-laws too. Actually, the daughter-in-laws probably built the boat, but more creative. But the reality is we're going to give an answer for what we do. We're going to give an answer for the decisions we make. There was no magistrate in the land that might put them to shame in anything. I don't know if you understand where we've been the last couple years. Really. There's no putting anybody to shame over wrongdoing. I know there's the peaceful protests we've had with bricks flying and fire, and I would like to know the total of law enforcement vehicles that were destroyed in that period of time, probably still today. How many officers were shot and killed? That's still happening on a regular basis. Well, what's going on? There's no magistrate. There's nobody that will put those that are doing evil to shame. We're in a bad spot, people. These are the kind of people, these are the kind of times where people can come in and take over because there's nobody running the show. And so we need to be scared of that. But I'm thankful for this, that even when there's no magistrate in the land, there's a magistrate over all the land. And he, by the way, is going to reward good, and he is going to punish evil. End of story. There's no way around it. You say, well, when is he going to do this? He has not filled me in on the timeline. He just promised he's going to. And so I just need to be faithful in doing good. But there's no magistrate to put anybody to shame in anything. That statement, in anything. Like you can just run amok and do whatever you want. How did we get to the place that there was ever more than two genders? It's insane. I mean, in my human mind, I would almost be okay with male, female, and undecided. Almost. I believe that God already decided for you, so you really don't need to decide. It's determined. I know. I was in the room when all three of my boys were born. And the doctor said, it's a boy. I'm like, oh, that's very rude of you to force them into being that. No, he said, no, there's proof. There was. The reality is God already decided it. So male and female, that's all we got. But now, last I heard, I've heard two different numbers, 27 and 72. I don't know if somebody was dyslexic and got the 72 or what, but if you can have 5 genders, you can have 5 million because there's no guidelines, there's no boundaries. And now we're the ones, we're weird. Well, you're strange because you believe there's only 2 genders. I am thankful, I really am, that there are a lot of unsaved, unchurched, unreligious people that still only believe there are 2 genders. We're not the lunatics. Because even lost people are like, yeah, you're right. And so that's a pretty good sign that we're not the ones that lost our mind. But how is it that we got to a place where it's okay to do that? Because there's nobody putting anybody to shame. Well, you can't shame them for that. You can't shame them for this. You can't shame them. Listen, you can either be put to shame or you will live and become shame. I think about the word humble. We hate to be humiliated, don't we? I don't like to be humiliated. Listen, I could start now and tell you over my lifetime the times I've been humiliated. Be like, yeah, this was bad. It was really bad. Just keep going. I don't like to be humiliated, but I can tell you the times that I've really been humiliated is when my pride was taking over. And it wasn't that everybody around me decided, we're going to pick on Dan and we're going to make fun of him. It was that my pride got in the way, and the Bible stands true. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before the fall. And so I've either been humiliated and learned from that, or my pride rises up and then humiliation comes because the Word of God will not return void. Humiliation is the way to become humble. But we want to stay away from that. We gotta give everybody their ego, and they gotta build them up and all of that. No. We need to at times shame people. There should be a response given when somebody is misbehaving. We said, hey, what are you thinking? What are you doing? Well, you can't do that. My wife was in Walmart a while ago, and there was it 2 young men riding their bikes through the Walmart? 3 young men riding bikes through Walmart. Like just in and out of the aisles and, half almost running over people. And I told her, I said, it's a good thing I wasn't there. Because as one went by, I just grabbed a handlebar and kicked the rear tire. Kaboom! There. You want to act like an idiot? Me too. And I know I could have caught all three of them. Because I can take a corner quicker on 2 feet than you can take a corner at Walmart on a bike. And it would have been fun. But there's a reason God had me working that day. And I know this. There's probably enough guys to be like, hey, if he can take one out, I'll take one out too. And we've been done. Thankfully, there was a man who I believe is an in-store security. And I don't know what he said. I've seen him a couple times because Shay's pointed him out, and I want to ask him. But he simply approached these young men, said something, and then he walked away with the bikes, and they walked out the door. And I'm like, I want to know what that dude said. Really? Was it like, I'm about to dismember you? I don't know. But he said something that it got the job done. Now, I can tell you honestly, when I'm in Walmart now, I look for kids on bikes. And I'm like, send one this way. Not once since. One of these days I'll be walking near the bikes and I'll see a little 2-year-old on a tricycle and I'll be like, wah, you know. Don't even get an idea. But the reality is, there was nobody there that was willing to put them to shame. They can run amok like that because nobody's willing to stop them and say, hey, we don't behave like that in here. Now, there's some parents I want to grab in Walmart and say, hey, we don't act like that here. We're grown-ups. You're 45. Stop throwing a fit. But the reality is there's nobody to put them to shame. We're there in America. We're Zidonians, pretty much. Be willing to put some people to shame within your bounds. You probably, and I probably, shouldn't take out teenagers at Walmart on bikes. But I know some of you are feeling the same way I am. Some of you women that carry that brick in your purse, you're like, one shot. Take that guy right off his bike. But there was nobody in the land to shame anybody. So they're just living amok. They have no purpose. They're just living life. And that's when the Danites go, you know what? We can take them. They're not connected to anybody. They're not even focused on life. They're not worried about protecting their place. They're just busy living carelessly. And so the spies come, and verse 8, they came unto their brethren, to Zorah and Eshtaol, and their brethren said to them, what say ye? They're like, hey, what'd you see when you spied out the land? Is this the place? Can we do it? Can we take them? There's a statement made in the next verse. And they said, arise, that we may go up against them, for we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. And are ye still? Like, they're just reporting, and they're like, arise, let's go. And before they even get done with that sentence, they're like, are you still? Like, come on, let's get moving, let's roll. Let's go ahead and take this land. And so they begin that track. He says in verse 9, they say in verse 9, be not slothful to go and enter to possess the land. Verse 10, when ye go, ye shall come unto a people secure and to a large land, for God hath given it into your hands, a place where there is no want of anything that is in the earth. I want you to be clear on something about America. I was not planning on preaching prophetically tonight, but one of the problems that we have in America, obviously, and this is, to me, it's not a political thing, it's just a common sense thing. Open borders. Do you know that if I have a pool on my property, the township does not allow me to have open borders. I have to have a fence. I have to have a fence on my property by township ordinance. But we're not allowed to have a fence to protect our country. That's a problem. Again, it's not a political thing. I'm not trying to push somebody's agenda or somebody's issue. I'm just saying, logically speaking, let's just live this way. I don't want to have any borders, so I'm just not going to have a front door anymore. No, I have a front door for a reason. Just so you know where I'm coming from, I'm from northern Pennsylvania. My front door is not to protect me, it's to protect you. Really. Because if you're dumb enough to walk into my house without invitation, it's going to hurt. I don't put the door there to protect me. I'm not afraid of what's out there. I slept in a hammock in the Congo. I'll be honest with you, I did position it. I thought, if there's animals coming, they're going to come from the forest. And so I made sure I was on this side of Brother McCullough. Like, they're going to see him. They'll be like, oh, he's tasty. And then I'll have time to run. But the reality is, I wasn't out there. I didn't lay awake all night. I got in my hammock, and I know I didn't lay awake all night because I heard that there was some wild beast snoring in amongst the hammocks. And I'm assuming I know who it was. But the reality is, I'm not afraid of what's outside. I'm reminded of my dad. He had to go to a farm one time, and it was his job. He had to go there, check some of the cows. This was years ago. Don't make me get detailed and graphic. He had to check the cows, okay? But the reality is, he went, and as he got there, the farmer said, listen, you want to be aware of my new dog, German Shepherd. He's been known to bite people. So my dad reached in under the seat of his car and pulled out his .357, strapped it around, and he goes, you might want to be aware of your new technician. He's been known to shoot a dog or two. He said every time he went there after that dog was tied up. All you got to do is be willing to shame somebody. Say, listen, I'm glad your dog protects your land, but it's my job to be here. You've called me to be here. I'm not going to fight with him. And the reality is, we need to have that idea that I'm not afraid of what's out there. I'm afraid of how I'm going to have to handle it. And the idea that we would leave our open borders and just not worry about, not only, I'm just going to be honest with you. The southern border does not bother me as much as the other borders we've let down. Our education system has destroyed from the inside what people are claiming is going to be destroyed by the southern border. We have deteriorated up through the bottom. We have fed our children lies, and we've gotten to the point where we've graduated them, we've sent them through liberal colleges, and now they're back in teaching our children. So we've come full circle. We've let the deterioration come up through, earn their degrees, and then come back in, and we're just cultivating. How many of you have ever done like a mulch, a homemade mulch thing? And you pack it all in there, and then you have to turn it every once in a while. And then the more you turn it, the more fermentation it has, the more it smells. And you're like, oh yeah, this is good stuff. And there's people that reach in there, like, oh yeah, like, yeah, take a bite. But that's really what's happened with our education system. It's deteriorated, it's rotted from the inside out. And, listen, I'm not saying that we should have open borders. I'm against that. But we've done more damage up through the education system than will ever happen up through the southern border. I believe that that's a decoy. And, it's tough to be in my position and have that belief. You're a board member? Yeah. And I am not bored praying for what's going on in the education system. But we've got to have closed borders. We've got to have those areas. We've got to have protected things. I preached this morning on fathers. I tell people all the time, you are in charge of your home. The state doesn't run your children. The school doesn't run your children. It's home. That's where your kids learn. That's where they're going to get their character from. That's where you have the opportunity to grow them into what God wants them to be. When we turn them over to the state, we're just playing part of the system. And the reality of not having those borders, not having that protection, puts us in a position for anybody else to go, you know what, I think we can take America. I know, I hear some of the conspiracy theories that are out there, and I heard one a while ago that all of the warehouses they have been putting up is so the Chinese can put us in and gas us. Gassing's not bad. I'm in heaven. Hallelujah. I feel bad for some of the things that come with that, but I don't know. But I know this. If somebody does come in and take over, they didn't do it without God giving us over into their hand. I'll be honest with you. When we pledge to the flag, one nation under God, that is almost taking the Lord's name in vain. Because we don't believe that anymore. Definitely in the public school we don't. It's crazy. We're not one nation under God. We're one nation who used to know God. And I'm thankful again that on the personal level, I don't have to fall prey to what all the country's doing. I can still have the hand of God in my life. I can still have God blessing me. I can still have God protecting me. I don't have to go, oh no, America's falling. I'll be like, oh wait, America's falling. I need to fall on my knees. Get in the presence of God and make sure that I'm walking with God. If God does choose to turn America over to some other country, I can tell you this, we've earned it. We deserve it. Like I used to tell my boys when I give them a spank, and I said, listen, we don't give these out for free. You earned these. At the time that you are meeting Dad in the bedroom with the wood spanker thing, they named it, I didn't. With the wood spanker thing, you have put in your time. You have earned this. We didn't have a rewards program, but some of them believed we did. Well, I punched 5 bad things today, and so I get a 6th one free. But the reality is, America deserves to be handed over into our enemy's hands because of how we have disrespected the name of the God that rose our country up. And so we need to pray now more than ever. I know I've been getting from people that we need to pray for Biden, and we do. And there's a verse that people keep sending to me, and I didn't realize it was a verse when I started praying this, but that he would be removed and another take his place. Okay, it's a verse. It doesn't say Biden, by the way. But literally the Bible tells us that when the righteous are in rule, people rejoice. Man, well, we need somebody righteous in rule. Well, how's that going to happen? That's going to happen by the people of God getting a hold of God, repenting of whatever we need to, making sure that we're in an honorable position with God, and then God saying, okay, because of this many righteous people, I will not burn down America. It's not going to be about the military. It's not going to be about the politics. It's not going to be about the educational system. It's going to be about God's people standing up, spending time with God, and making sure that they're in an honorable position before God. At the point that God is done with America, we're done. I hope that if there's a point where God's done with America, that's the point of the rapture. That's what I hope. Because I'd rather not go into the ugly side of what happens when God's done with the country. But if we have to, so be it. But I just want to live a life. I have to mark this with my pen because we didn't get nowhere near. You guys get me on rabbit trails. And we go off in all sorts of directions. But I think it's very fitting that we go through something like this and our country is in the state it's in. We live careless. It's sad. But let's bow for a prayer. Father, we do thank you for the opportunity to be in your house. Lord, I thank you for your word. Lord, I thank you that you've recorded all of your dealings with your people. Lord, that we can pull out principles and Lord, that we can see that history truly does repeat itself. And Lord, the reason that is because we're ignorant to you. And Lord, I pray that you'd forgive us. Lord, that you would stir our hearts. Lord, even if it's just Cornerstone Baptist Church that decides we're going to believe in you, we're going to believe you, and we're going to follow you. Lord, I believe that you would do great things with us. And Lord, I know even tonight, many across this country are meeting in like precious faith. And Lord, we just thank you for keeping your hand upon us, even in a time when our country has turned their back. And Lord, just pray that you give us wisdom, Lord, as we navigate the things at hand. And Lord, I pray that you'd use us to be the light in the darkness. And Lord, we do ask this all in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.